Say an uphill battle, because Drake Sasser basically has been dominating
Cannot be
opponents
stopped.
all weekend.
Absolutely. Backbone of this team on the weekend.
Our other matchups here, we have Dylan Hand, Orzhov Vampires against Charles Azuelos on Bant's Scapeshift. And on the Legacy table, Brian Rogers will be bringing his Teamer Turbo Depths deck against Chad Harney's Delver. Lyric wins the die roll. Starts on the play with a basic island, and Drake sets things up with Hedron Crab. He is playing
Crabgak.
Crab build here.
So the nice thing about Hedron Crab is that it is one of the best tools for rebuilding after a hate card, and it also can't be countered by the aforementioned Force of Negation. This is something that is just going to dump a ton of cards in the graveyard if left unchecked.
And I do like this from Lyric. This is a 1-of in the main. It is Oust. A very clean answer to Hedron Crab.
Right, and this is the risk about playing Hedron Crab before you play any other cards, is you can just end up in situations where it doesn't actually have an effect.
Well, surprise, Drake had 2. Here's another Hedron
Well,
Crab.
why would you only draw 1 of a card you put in your deck? You put 4 in there for a reason.
So then plays Bloodstained Mire. He can mill himself for 3. He will mill over that other Hedron Crab, but that's not going to be a problem. So there's a crab. The Crab, Lotleth Troll, and Bloodghast join in.
Paid for not cracking with that ability on the stack to try and shuffle the Hedron Crab away. The upside is he gets to get this Bloodghast back with that fetch land.
Yeah, that was why he paused there, was to debate whether he wanted to shuffle before milling.
Exactly.
And he'll get Blood Crypts 3 more cards into the graveyard, and Bloodghast will be out of the graveyard.
What he really wants to see come off the top of the library here are copies of Vengevine. Because then if he has another creature that he can cast, then they're just immediately going to be returned from the graveyard.
Right, Hedron Crab was the first spell creature of the turn. Satyr, Wayfinder, Bloodghast, and Caustic Caterpillar. Now that second Bloodghast, that one hit the graveyard too late to come back this turn.
Unfortunately, he will have to wait a turn for his free 2-1.
Second creature for Drake, the Stitcher Supplier. Mills over. Gravecrawler, Gemstone Mine.
Carrion Feeder from the looks of
Carrion
it?
Feeder, yeah.
No Hogak!
Yeah, he went through a lot of cards without Hogak.
This is actually a pretty big deal, not hitting the Hogak here. 3 power on turn 2 is, I'm going to level with you. It's not impressive. Great. This is not what gets you. This is not why people play this deck.
Yeah, ideally he would have milled over Hogak and cast it that turn.
Exactly. That is the play that makes this deck good.
But on Lyric's side, misses his land drop, and now goes for Surgical Extraction on Gravecrawler.
Okay, and this is something that it's not going to feel very good, but it looks like there's a Bloodghast hiding out in Drake's hand, so this might be a little bit of a win for him.
Yeah, also when he gets another Gravecrawler out of Drake's hand, so it's going to be a pretty good Surgical Extraction. Looking to Drake's hand. His hand has the last 2 copies of Bloodghast in it, another Stitcher Supplier, and a Vengevine. And actually, this hand's not particularly strong on Drake's side. I think he'd like to see a fetch land in it for the Hedron Crab.
Yeah, and, there's a chance that this Stitcher Supplier just fixes things, finds a Hogak, something to that effect. But as it stands, his hand just doesn't do very much.
Yeah, was it Faithless Looting would probably be the card he'd want to see the
Oh,
most.
Snapcaster made Surgical Extraction doing a Cabal Therapy impression.
Right, so then now we see the strength of Surgical Extraction. He gets to look at Drake's hand and then be more informed on his second Surgical.
Wow, this is going to be very close to, honestly, just a time walk.
Even with Faithless Looting getting found, is that good enough now?
The best thing that could happen to Drake here is if he casts his Stitcher Supplier and mills a Hogak and 2 Vengevines.
Okay, but that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's the best possible thing that could happen, but that's oddly specific at this point, right?
Yeah.
Just honestly, even just a Hogak here would be so strong.
Right.
With Kulik missing that land drop.
So here is Stitcher Supplier. 3 cards. He really likes to see Hogak. Land, Lotleth Troll. No dice. Swings in for 3. Lyric's not going to block Stitcher Supplier here.
No, this is just offering the Bloodghast.
So Charles has successfully kept Drake off balance. He does need lands now, though, and a way to turn the corner when he doesn't have it yet.
Well, on the bright side, he does have a little bit of time.
So swing in for 4. Snapcaster will block Bloodghast.
Blocking the
Down to
Bloodghast
14.
is assuming that there's just not a land coming.
Gemstone Mine there. Unfortunately for him, in hand for Drake, so Bloodghast will come back. 3 more cards will hit the graveyard. It's an interesting sequencing on Drake's side. He actually had a decision here, because now if he mills over Hogak, he actually won't be able to cast it this turn.
Yeah, it's a really rough scenario. You probably end up doing it just because, you know, surgical mid-combat could have taken care of this Bloodghast. There are other things you could look into hitting. You just want to make sure that you're able to do things, and you want this Bloodghast to attack in the event you don't hit a Hogak.
Exactly, and indeed, and he did. Finds Hedron Crab, Carrion Feeder, and a land.
Playing the land there would have also allowed him to flash back a Faithless Looting if he found one.
First result in, Drake's teammate Chad Harney takes game 1 on the Legacy table. And the medium beats are continuing here as Drake swings in for 4.
Medium's generous, I think.
Now timely reinforcements from Kulik. So taking some damage. And another Stitcher Supplier here from Drake. Mills over Faithless Looting. So next turn he can flash that back. So after the attacks and the timely reinforcements, Lyric at 13. We see an attack here. Bloodghast hits the graveyard. Down to 11.
Sasser practically begging Kulik to trade with one of these Stitcher Suppliers.
Narset Parter Avails for Lyric. Top 4 gets a non-creature spell.
And that's a great hit for 2 reasons. Is it gives Kulik a chance to find his important cards like Path to Exile, and also it gives him a chance to find things like Opt to just hit land drops, and it turns off Faithless Looting.
Yeah, a trio of 1/1s for Drake.
It's a 1-1 fight.
Now he can actually cast the Vengevine in his hand if he draws a green mana source. But his deck, 2 Overgrown Tomb, 3 more Gemstone Mine, and some fetch lands, can do it.
It's all a question at this point of if he wants to. Because without those Grave Crawlers or those extra copies of Bloodghast in his deck anymore, his deck is not very resilient to something like Supreme Verdict. And we're getting to the range where Kulik can just cast that card.
So 1 supplier went at Narset, 2 went upstairs. The one at Narset got blocked, 2 Hogaks into the graveyard.
Uh-oh, Gak attack.
It's here, but he can't cast it yet.
So he's keeping the Gak back.
This is good. We've been waiting for this match all weekend. At 9, knows there's a Path to Exile in hand. His deck, yeah, the Bloodghasts are gone, the Grave Crawlers are gone.
And this is the game that Kulik was the most worried about. Because after this, Kulik gets access to things like Rest in Peace.
Yeah, a full playset.
Yeah.
3 mana. He's going to flash back Faithless Looting. Now, he can't draw cards. So he's just discarding.
Luckily, he can discard them.
This is when you know a deck is really good, when it's like, yeah, I will pay 3 mana to discard 2 cards. Your turn.
2 Vengevines, as a matter of fact.
Love it.
You love to see it.
The draw is Force of Negation for Lyric. Narset will try to find him some help.
And this is a spot where... Oh, wow. Okay, so if Sasser can just find a creature spell, those Vengevines come back and actually put Kulik at a pretty low life total.
Right. Now Kulik finds Surgical Extraction. So Hogak's in the yard, Vengevine's in the yard, a lot of good targets. Now he's at 9. These Surgicals are adding up.
So this is a spot where it's not that difficult to just target something like Vengevine, and then if you just have Path to Exile and the like to check Hogak, you're in pretty good shape.
Real question, once you surgically extract the Vengevines, so one thing that Lyric's been doing this game is he's not been blocking Stitcher's suppliers. But if he surgicals the Vengevines, I almost feel like he can start blocking them, because what's Drake going to mill over anymore?
Yeah, there's no Gravecrawler, there's one Bloodghast. There's just not that much going on anymore. One of the games that this blue-white control deck can play that almost feels like a prison deck is it just answers all the threats. Literally all of them. And we're getting pretty close to that threshold where Hogak is a strong deck that's redundant, has a bunch of powerful cards, but ultimately it's a synergy deck that plays to 4 or 5 cards that actually do anything.
Right, if you can exile all their things, right? And we see during the draw step, and Drake even drew the Vengevine, so Lyric gets his draw step as well off this surgical. He goes to 7. All right, Drake running out of things. And we're actually going to see Lyric pull the trigger. This is on upkeep. He's going to path away a Stitcher Supplier, and that stops Hogak from happening.
This is an odd play. I believe there's a Bloodghast in Graveyard, but Drake may have milled his only basic at this point.
Right, there's a Bloodghast in the yard, but this was done during the surgical was during the draw step. So he knows there's not a land drop for the turn.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I think...
Well, no, but Path lets him search for a land.
Oh, you're right.
But he did get to look at Drake's deck before this, so he was able to make sure the coast was clear.
Oh, that's nice.
That's heads up on Kulik's part. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he actually checked, is this path going to find a land? No. Okay, then we're good. So, with that said, Lyric, I believe, took a hit down to 6 off the Stitcher's Supplier.
You can see it in Kulik's body language here, that he's just playing a little bit faster. Okay, I just need to close this. Let's do it. Let's get this game over one way or another.
Well, right, as soon as he finds that 4th land, he's got Supreme Verdict and Force of Negation in hand. This should be good.
Yeah, he has a Teferi. He has something he can win with. All the pieces are here.
What's stopping him from blocking here? You see the Stitcher Supplier attacking. Is there something he's worried about getting milled? I don't know that there is.
Don't believe so, but it's sort of a better safe than sorry situation.
And the 4th land shows up.
It's also possible his plan is to try and have this soldier block something bigger like a carrion feeder just in case.
Sure. Yeah, it is only 1 damage.
Right, and it was at a Narset, which isn't that valuable since Faithless Looting isn't dumping anything of consequence anymore.
Four lands in play, Lyric found Cryptic Command off the Narset, and showing some patience, does not even want to Supreme Verdict yet. He waits to Cryptic. Cryptic Command, Force of Negation in hand. 3 Planeswalkers as well. 2 Planeswalkers, Narset, Teferi.
Likely respecting that Bloodghast in the graveyard.
Right, he's at 6, so it has haste.
At this point, if you're in Kulik's seat, you're kind of thinking to yourself, I've won this game. I just need to not lose this game. It all feels like you have the tools to win the game, just don't screw it up in the meantime.
Like that's from turn 1. That's
Was that a Hedron Crab targeting Kulik?
I mean, it might be. It makes sense. There's 2 Hedron Crabs in play.
Yeah, Snapcaster already has Surgical Extraction and Path in Graveyard.
Yeah.
Drake's mostly playing for information anyway.
This will make him pull the trigger on the Supreme Verdict. Bloodghast jumps out of the graveyard. Drake can convoke out Hogak. Or he can attack. And he goes for...
It's likely going to be Hogak. You just need to be able to actually hope to close the game. It's those hope lines we've been talking about where
maybe he has nothing.
He recognizes that this game is probably a little bit out of reach. He probably has the read on something to the effect of Teferi. He knows there's a Cryptic Command that can just tap his team and draw a card. But the ways that he wins this game involve Kulik running out of steam from there, or just finding cards that aren't castable or aren't relevant and so on.
And it does feel like this Hogak play will get the supreme verdict from Lyric.
Right.
Now, whether or not Drake can win after that point, I'm not sure.
Well, Bloodghast will get to attack for 2 if that happens.
Okay.
It's hard to say what can happen after that, but attacking for 2, very legal.
Yeah, and Lyric's down to 5 here on this fetch, so that could put him to 3. You're getting close. And Cryptic Command actually going to be counter draw on the Hogak.
And this is just buying a turn. In a lot of ways, it felt like this was the tap draw, but it also exiled a bunch of cards from the graveyard. Without anything like Vengevine and most of the Bloodghast gone out of Sasser's deck, there is not much reach that he has left.
5th land shows up for Kulik. Can reach for that Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. And he will. It's one of the 5-mana Planeswalker, draws a card, untaps 2 lands. Doesn't have to worry about too much surprise damage. All the haste, those Bloodghasts and Vengevines, they're all gone.
Right, he knows there's nothing like Conflagrate or Creeping Chill coming from this graveyard deck.
No. And can Drake get any damage in?
Is that an Assassin's Trophy in his hand?
Drake has 1 main deck copy of Assassin's Trophy. So it certainly could be. You see an attack. The 1/1's going to block. I think there's, some question as to whether you'd trophy the blocker away here.
It's tough. So anyone who's a fairly heads-up player is going to know that Force of Negation exists, so you don't want to cast your spells that Force of Negation can counter during your turn. But if you let Kulik untap, then he's going to get a chance to actually just untap his lands during his own turn.
Post-combat, we see Faithless Looting from Drake. Discards another Looting into Hogak. And Stitcher's Supplier, the last card.
It's a body. It's not particularly attractive, but it is an attacker.
Lyric's at 4. So, a 1/1 is a quarter of his life total. Teferi will plus. More Force of Negations, and now really a lot of patience there from Lyric. Finally decides it's time for Supreme Verdict.
It is time to mill 6, Drake. Or pack the cards in. Your call.
And it's like, those do not go to exile. You go to the graveyard, you mill 6. And you mentioned it, you run your opponent out of cards.
Yep. Yeah, Drake is just kind of running on fumes at this point. He's no cards in hand?
Right, no cards. There's a Colonnade from Lyric. That can win. Three mana, flashback of Faithless Looting from Drake. And I think Lyric's at the point where he's just going to start hard casting these Force of Negations.
Wow, looking at discarding a card here is pretty interesting, or exiling a card rather is kind of interesting, but if he feels like he just doesn't need to give Drake any kind of window when he has a Logic Knot in his hand, it makes sense.
Teferi's going to draw into Jace. That should take care of things here.
Nail, meat coffin.
And yeah, Drake knows it. So, Lyric Kulik, Azorius Control takes the game 1. You mentioned this was the hardest one for him to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Without having those rest in pieces, it's really an uphill fight for Azorius pre-board, but a timely surgical extraction or 3 really sealed it up.
And when you're going to play Control in a field where there's a deck like Hogak, your sideboard is going to be really skewed to beat it, and this is no exception.
Let's see, 4 rest in peace? Count them. 1 rest in peace, 2 rest in peace, 3 rest in peace, 4.
And it doesn't stop there. Looking at the rest of the sideboard, we have Celestial Purges, Vendilion Clicks, Monastery Mentors, a second Timely Reinforcements, another Sweeper, a Dovin's Veto, and a Zomrona's Rejection.
So the things that we're going to be looking at here are naturally going to be rest in peace. Celestial Purge is something that just gets rid of Hogak, which is particularly attractive. Then you also, like Timely Reinforcements, is something that just makes a bunch of bodies and gives you a little bit more breathing room against things like Vengevine and Bloodghast. Finally, the thing that you could see him leaning into is also Wrath of God, just to have more ways to mop up the battlefield because of how strong that card is in conjunction with something like Rest in Peace. If Drake gets to, say, turn to a Hogak on the play, you can Rest in Peace on 2, maybe path something, and then if you get a chance to Wrath of God, it's effectively game over for Sasser at that point.
So we see Rest in Pieces, Purges, Wrath of God, all planning to come in here. It feels like the Planeswalkers out of Lyric's side are where I'm going to see these cuts. Things like Narset and Jace.
Yeah, Narset can be a little bit awkward at times. Your counter magic is also going to be a little bit weaker if it costs a bunch of mana. I think it's hard to say how much value something like Cryptic Command is going to have. Mana Leak can be particularly awkward, especially if you're on the draw. Spell Snare barely has targets if he had something like that.
Now on Drake's side, he has his Force of Vigors. Those can fight back against Rest in Peace. But outside of that, I mean, we have Thoughtseize. Maybe that's good enough.
Yeah, this one is varied a little bit from sideboard plan to sideboard plan. Some people like to just lean into the full hand disruption plan rather than using things like Force of Vigor, because their thought is you have to preempt the graveyard hate anyway, or it's going to have too much of an effect if they get to just get a trigger off of a Rest in Peace. So it's going to come down to if you'd rather have Brutality on the play versus Force of Vigor on the draw, or if he's just going to be completely on one side of that aisle.
So the next rotation we have coming up here in Standard is with the set Throne of Eldraine. That ships coming up actually in just about 2 months we'll have that. In Standard, the whole landscape's going to change.
Yeah, it's going to get mystical and magical and fairy tale.
Fairy tale, not fairy, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, there's not much about it out right now. I just know there are a bunch of fairies that got the internet really excited, and then I think it was Mark Rosewater said something to the effect of there not being many fairies.
In the set, it's a fairy tale set.
Look, sometimes you just want to see Secluded Glen get bought out. It's fine.
So you can pre-order it at Star City Games. Those orders will ship on Friday, October 4th. That's the first time you can get the set, but we are taking orders now at starcitygames.com/ELD for Eldraine.
Dang, I can't believe ELD spells such a long word.
No. It's definitely not Eldrazi, it's Eldraine.
I wonder if anyone saw just, hashtag, is it MTGELD? Is that the abbreviation for it, or the hashtag or what have you? Assuming that's it, I wonder if anyone thought just, oh god, they're back.
The surprise ending to every story arc is that the Eldrazi show up and eat everything.
Oh, yeah, why wouldn't Emrakul be on Innistrad? Why didn't I see this coming? Of course.
That was right after Emrakul was on,
Yeah.
8 Zendikar, and then was on Innistrad. Then suddenly you'll learn that it's called Eldraine because thousands of years ago the Eldrazi were here, and then they're going to eat that flame too.
Eldraine is what the Fae have titled the Tentacled Titans.
Game 2 here. Drake Sasser down a game. Starts out with Faithless Looting.
Really not discarding anything too powerful there. It just looks like a Carrion Feeder and a Bloodghast. That's not the kind of thing that you want to be pitching that early. Or it might actually just be a Carrion Feeder and a Gravecrawler, excuse me.
See Satyr Wayfinder. This is a lot of setup for Drake. And my worry would be, if Lyric just makes a Rest in Peace here, then Drake discarded 2 cards and made a 1/1.
Look, at least there might have been a 1/1 made. He hasn't done that yet. Well, I guess he did with the Satyr Wayfinder, but not off the Faithless Looting.
Yeah, no, that's what, yeah. The 1/1 Satyr Wayfinder. This is a pretty fair graveyard. We see another Carrion Feeder. So it's 2 Grave Crawlers in the yard.
I see a Monastery Mentor hiding out in Kulik's hand there. That's actually an interesting way to attack the deck if you just make a few bodies, because you know that Sasser is not very good at answering creatures in post-board games.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see that one come in out of the sideboard. Now, we do see other sideboard cards here. It looks like Lyric does not have one of his 4 Rest in Pieces, but he has 2 of his Celestial Purges in the hand.
And something like Monastery Mentor is going to be great at checking, say, Vengevine.
Right.
Just fine. So he just wants to make sure he doesn't get got by a very fast Hogak, and assumes that if he can kind of check that box, then everything else is going to work itself out over time.
It's kind of interesting to see whether this fair game plan can work. A turn 3 Monastery Mentor, untap, purge a card, make some monks, attack. It might be good enough. Stitcher's Supplier for Drake. This could be a big turn.
Okay, it's a Hogak. Just needs another creature spell.
He has a Vengevine. If he had a Hogak, he'd be off to the races, right?
He's stacking these creatures in a way that says Hogak.
Oh, in his hand.
Right.
I don't disagree. Yeah, Hogak at the front of the hand. You're absolutely right. Hasn't made a land drop yet either. There's the land. He wanted to see if he'd hit a Bloodghast first. So Hogak would be creature number 2. Vengevine would come back.
Right, and this is Sasser weighing if he wants to go ahead and cast one of those grave crawlers from his graveyard now that the Stitcher Supplier is on the battlefield or not. What he's doing now and was kind of worried about is if he doesn't have another zombie in his hand and he gives Kulik priority to respond to this Bloodstained Mire, Kulik could then path to exile the Stitcher Supplier, and all of a sudden Drake just doesn't have a play anymore.
Right. Now he did pass priority on that fetch land, so looks like there is not a surgical.
Sometimes you just got to make him have it.
Right. And we'll see Gravecrawler. That's creature number 2. So trigger on Vengevine.
May have been interested in seeing Kulik's Celestial Purge, the Stitcher Supplier here, to try and turn off this line. But if he thought that Sasser just had another 1-drop creature in his hand anyway, that this is a fine show of patience.
And now Gravecrawler and Stitcher Supplier are going to convoke out Hogak.
Call that Convoke-Gak.
Going to be an 8/8. Are there Hogaks that aren't Convoke-Gaks?
There are Dream Hall's Gax.
Ooh, I would like, that sounds good.
Omni Gax.
This is a sweet deck. I want to play this one.
It's honestly the biggest relief anyone has ever felt from watching their opponent cast an Omniscience.
Omniscience, Hogak.
Okay, yeah, you have an Omniscience. Just show me the... Oh. Oh my god, yes, do
let me cast Hogak for free. Hold on.
Hold on, I'm going to spend 10 mana, including blue.
Celestial Purge took care of Hogak. Lyric still down to 13. That one spot removal spell not going to be enough. Vengevine gets ousted.
That's not bad here. That just buys time. Drake needs to find a way to put that card back in his graveyard.
And Lyric missing his land drop. Which means he passes back at 13 life to Drake, which makes Satyr Wayfinder. Wants to find a land. That mills over the Vengevine, which he knew was there. Mills over another Vengevine. Finds a land. If he has a 1-drop in hand, things... Oh, no, wait, there's a Gravecrawler in the graveyard. He doesn't need a 1-drop in his hand.
Wow. Funny how that works.
Yeah, so I'll cast this, get back those. Oh, all the cards went away.
Jeez.
Drake evens things up at 1 game apiece.
Kulik blinking, oh, what just happened? And I want to go back to that turn where Kulik had the opportunity to Celestial Purge Stitcher Supplier.
Yeah.
That would have kind of made the entire house of cards, the bottom just fall out of the house of cards there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Because the Hogak deck is so explosive, you can't, these plays where, don't want to purge your 1/1, I'll wait and purge your 8/8. These fair game plans that you'd normally do, they make sense, but when your opponent's deck is so powerful, you just can't let them execute their game plan at all, and you have to make these really strange-looking plays, I think like the one you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's certainly an aspect of risk to it where if it doesn't work out, you just look very dumb for it, and you really don't want to ever look dumb, right? But sometimes that's just the type of risk you have to make in order to kind of overcome the fact that you're on the draw against this explosive deck that has had its explosive draw and so on.
So no sooner does Drake pick up the win as the other matches start being sent to Game 3. Brian Rogers wins Game 2, Dylan Hand wins Game 2. So you see across the board, we have 3 games to play.
1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
That's robot language.
What can I say? I speak binary.
Nice. It's robot language for 63.
Gonna be a 0 from me, Matthias.
We have the creature collection at Star City Games. You can get custom creatures on your playmats, sleeves, and bundles for the month of August. It is the Gruff Champion. It is your goat warrior. You can get this one available now, starcitygames.com/creature collection. I like this one. I think a goat would make a good knight.
Honestly, they're doing their best.
Well, I like seeing he's got the hammer because, it's kind of a Norse weapon, and they would have the goat horns, and the goat just has them already set up. Like, yeah, I got my goat horn helm on because I'm a goat.
Of course, perfect.
Yeah. We do have our first result done. 2-1, Brian Rogers winning in Legacy. So Drake going to have to win again here to keep his team alive. What I learned from that last game is that if you want to beat Hogak, you need to do something on their level of unfair. So Larrick was able to win Game 1 when he cast Surgical Extraction, a free magic card that costs no mana. He's able to cast it twice. You competed with your opponent's free spells by casting
twice.
Oh, his was 3, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
So when your opponent plays spells without paying for them, you must also play spells without paying for them. If you're going to think that you will win by paying for your spells, then Game 2 happens.
I thought you were going to say you have to pull out your opponent's spine through their neck. I thought that was what you were going to say about their surgical extraction, and I'm sorry, my brain went a completely different direction.
You'll have to pull it out multiple times. 3 to be exact.
What can I say? Hogak's a spinal deck.
Hogak has many spines.
It's we call it Hoback.
Ooh. See Chad Harney going over to assist his teammates there in their Game 3s.
Everyone in the tank. And really, there are a lot of decisions throughout all of these games that all of them matter so much.
And I think for Game 3, we're going to see a turn 2 rest in peace from Lyric.
That is exactly where Lyric wants to be. Also believe we see 3 lands in Lyric's hand. And
he hasn't had that yet either.
Exactly. Something that's kind of defined these first 2 games for Lyric is this very mana-hungry blue deck. He's stumbled a lot, and it's cost him a ton of percentage points. Obviously, it cost him the most last game. But him having a turn 2 hate card as well as a few land drops here is going to be so big for him.
Faithless Looting from Drake. He's not going to get to keep these cards. He doesn't know that yet. But we do.
Well, you can't take it with you.
Rest in Peace set up a way that even if Drake were to have something like Force of Vigor to remove it, the yard will still be cleared. It is a trigger when it enters.
If my opponent Faithless Lootings out of Hogak on 1 and discards a Stitcher Supplier, I am horrified.
Yeah, Stitcher Supplier and Vengevine.
That's the point where I just go, what is in their hand?
I don't need Stitcher Supplier. It's the worst card.
Yeah, it is not a graveyard card, and it is also worse than all the other cards in my hand. It's possible he has the read on this Rest in Peace and is hedging his bets, so he could keep something like Force of Vigor and a green card.
Okay.
And that's 2 of the 6 remaining cards in his hand that he has to hold on to. Then he has, say, maybe another graveyard card if he wanted to hedge his bets, and then the payoff cards and the enablers.
Here is Rest in Peace. Graveyard is gone. Now, you've played some Hogak. How well can it win without removing this?
It depends a lot on what the Azorius control deck has going on. Sometimes you can set up a sort of mediocre beatdown plan with Carrion Feeder, hard casting Vengevines, and so on. Ultimately, they're all pretty good cards in Limited, right, where you even remove all the graveyard synergies. But things like Hogak are completely unplayable, and generally speaking, Azorius control is going to be better equipped to play a fair game.
What's a Hogak called when you convoke it by tapping 7 creatures?
Do you have the punchline for this?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't. My jokes don't have punchlines.
Oh, well, that's true. I don't think I can say it on the air.
Oh, wow. Gravecrawler here. The medium beats plan will commence.
Listen.
It's 2-1 for 1. Savannah Lions.
It is what it is, you know?
I think they're going to unsummon our Savannah Lions.
Now we're watching a great game of Standard. It's basically Bant Scapeshift versus Orzhov Vampires right now. We are
Get
just
that
watching
Sky
it in
Marcher ass
action.
print back into his hand. And there you go.
Not getting greedy, locking up land drops.
Wow. Draws Surgical Extraction with a Rest in Peace in play. It's just dead card.
We call that good deck building. All joking aside, it's more just that Kulik's hedging his bets here, and it looks embarrassing sometimes. But when you have cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor in your deck, it's perfectly serviceable to have something like that.
It's that Hogak is so powerful that it's all hands on deck.
Exactly.
And sometimes they don't work well together, but
in this case, you kind of can just take your medicine and say, you know what? Yeah, I'll have a couple dead cards in my deck if it means that Hogak is going to have 30 dead cards in its deck.
Look, sometimes there's dwarves in your Goblins of the Flarg deck. And it just makes it work.
Was that a punchline? I'm too young for that reference.
Oh, man. That's a good one. That's a good one. You can look it up. I believe the first mono red deck, just like mono red deck wins. It's just red deck wins. They just basically played all the red 1-drops. And some of them were and some of them even had drawbacks. Like one was a goblin who gets worse when you play dwarves, and there were dwarves in the deck. You just played them both because those are all the creatures you could play.
Yeah, whatever. You're only playing 4 turns of Magic anyway. 5 turns ideally.
Yeah, so sometimes it'd be like you're all Savannah Lions deck, and some of them, literally you can't play at the same time.
Wow. Listen, sometimes you just got to balance the triple 1-drop draw. I imagine that was a great thing to be doing back then.
It was good flavor. Dwarves and goblins didn't like each other.
Newest duel deck.
Dwarves and goblins?
For it. Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know if that one's going to be very close.
Well, there's even Dwarven Recruiter, isn't there?
All right. How about this? So the goblins get Goblin Ringleader and Siege Gang Commander, and they go wide.
Look at this.
Timely reinforcements from Lyra.
At instant speed. Mid-combat.
I'll block.
As I would like to move to blocks.
Right. So the goblins get a bunch of goblin cards, and the dwarves get a bunch of cards that make 1/1s and 2/2s unblockable, and then we see how it plays out. They can get things like Dwarven Pony. I don't think Goblin Pony's a card.
Well, yeah, okay. I buy that. That's probably true.
I don't know how they'll compete. And Lyric cleaning up here. Even if Drake can remove the Rest in Peace, it feels like too much damage has been done.
Yeah, just 2 active Planeswalkers on the battlefield, one of which is a Jace the Mind Sculptor. He's even thinking about holding on to this Surgical Extraction in his hand just as insurance for the Rest in Peace getting removed. There's a backup Rest in Peace in hand. It just really shows that this Azorius deck is firing on all cylinders when it gets to lock out the unfair thing that the Hogak deck is doing.
The Dwarves get Dwarven Song. They can sing the Goblins to death. I think it's going to be a great dual deck. And in the meantime, Lyric Kulik makes the win official. 2-1. He is the winner, and his team will move on. Him and